My name is James Turner. I'm 48 years old. I've never been the flashy type, but I've always believed in consistency, in showing up every single day, even when the sparks faded and the world got too loud. For 15 years, I stood beside my wife, through job losses, sick parents, raising our 2 daughters, and building a life from scratch. I was never perfect, but I was present. And for our 15th anniversary, I wanted to do something thoughtful, not grand, not gaudy, but something that came from the best parts of me. I spent 3 months working extra shifts to save for it. It wasn't diamonds or a 5-star vacation. It was a handmade bracelet, custom designed with 3 small stones, one for each of us, her, me, and the life we built together. On the inside, I had it engraved with a line from the first letter she ever wrote me. "You were my safe place before I even knew I needed one." That line got me through our hardest years. I thought maybe it meant something to her too. The evening was at a family dinner. Her idea, a rented space, filled with cousins, aunts, friends, cameras. She loved the spotlight. I didn't. But I went along with it, because I thought maybe this was how she wanted to feel celebrated. After the toast, I stood up, hand slightly shaking, and gave her the small box. I said something quiet, simple, told her I loved her, that 15 years meant more to me than I could explain in front of everyone. She opened the box, slowly, glanced at the bracelet, and laughed. A sharp, short laugh that cut through the room like glass on tile. Then she looked at the crowd and said, "He really thought this was enough." Everyone went still. A few chuckled awkwardly, thinking it was a joke, but I saw her face. It wasn't. She shook her head and added, "After 15 years, this is cheap. I deserve better." And just like that, something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in silence. I didn't say a word. I smiled, small, closed-lipped, and sat down. The room shifted awkwardly. Her sister tried to change the subject. Someone poured more wine. But inside me, something larger than humiliation began to form. A realization that the woman I had built my life around had long since stopped valuing what couldn't be bought. And what she didn't know yet was that I had just started calculating the cost of staying. The drive home was quiet. She sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. No apology, no acknowledgement, just silence, the kind that isn't peaceful, but dismissive. I stared at the road, trying not to let the weight in my chest make it hard to breathe. I replayed the moment in my head over and over. The laughter, the way her eyes rolled, the way her voice turned cruel. 15 years of effort, dismissed in 15 seconds, not just by her words, but by her indifference. That night, I placed the bracelet gently on my dresser. It didn't feel right to throw it away. I had still meant every word. The meaning hadn't changed, only the person it was meant for. And for the first time in years, I let myself wonder, what if I had been loving someone who had stopped seeing me long ago? What if I had been so busy providing that I hadn't noticed she was no longer grateful, only expectant? The days that followed were filled with small changes. She barely looked at me, except when she needed something. She never brought up the dinner again, like it was a glitch in the system, a moment to be buried. But for me it was a seed, and each moment of coldness afterward watered it. I didn't confront her. I didn't fight. I didn't even sulk. I became still, watchful, focused. Because when a man starts mourning a marriage in silence, he's already halfway out the door emotionally. I began taking longer walks in the morning, paid closer attention to our finances, watched the credit card statements. Not to accuse, but to prepare. Something in me had changed. I didn't want to punish her. I just wanted to protect what was left of myself. I started investing more time in myself. Quietly, signed up for a professional course I had shelved for years. Spoke to an old friend in real estate. I told no one what I was planning. I didn't even know fully myself. But I knew this. I was done being humiliated for loving simply and deeply. She, on the other hand, began spending more. New bags, luxury dinners out with her friends. She posted photos online of treating herself, and I watched, silently. I smiled and said, "Looks like fun." And every time I did, she smiled back. Not realizing I wasn't admiring her, I was documenting her exit. Because love should never feel like debt. And the next gift I was preparing would cost me nothing but my peace and would be the most expensive lesson she'd ever receive. It's strange how clearly you start seeing someone when you stop trying to be seen by them. Once I pulled back emotionally, it was like I had stepped outside the marriage and was watching it from a distance. I saw how she rolled her eyes when I spoke, how she interrupted me mid-sentence in front of others, how her compliments were reserved only for things she could show off online, never for the quiet ways I supported her. I wasn't a partner to her anymore. I was a prop in the background of her performance. At first I blamed myself. Maybe I had gotten too boring, too predictable, too ordinary. But the more I reflected, the more I realized that I had been consistent, reliable, loyal. The problem wasn't that I gave too little, it's that she needed chaos to feel alive, and I refused to become a man who had to buy his way into his own wife's affection. So I stopped chasing approval, and I started planning a life where my value wasn't measured in price tags. I met with a lawyer, quietly, anonymously at first, just to ask questions. What would happen if I walked away? What was mine? What was shared? I left that meeting not angry, but clear. I also met with a financial advisor, restructured some accounts, and updated a few policies. It was amazing how much of our life I had built without her ever understanding the depth of it. She mocked the bracelet, not knowing it was purchased after sacrificing months of planning, saving and staying late at work. That same discipline was now focused on my future. One night she came home tipsy from a friend's birthday dinner. She laughed as she kicked off her heels and said, "God, I hope I don't end up like some of these other wives, stuck with guys who think a charm bracelet is romantic." She was talking to herself, not even looking at me, but I looked at her, really looked, and in that moment I knew she was no longer my partner. Just someone who shared a mortgage, a last name, and a memory of who we used to be. That was the night I pulled out the box, the one that still held the bracelet. I opened it, looked at it one last time, and then placed it gently in a drawer, not to forget, but to remember who I was when I bought it. A man who still believed love was about thought, not cost. She hadn't just rejected a gift. She rejected everything it stood for. But soon, she'd learned the real price of losing a man who gave his heart, and then learned how to take it back. From that point on, everything I did was intentional. I still woke up early, made coffee, took care of the bills. I still greeted her with a polite nod. Still asked about her day, not because I cared anymore, but because peace was my armor. I wasn't going to give her a war, I was going to give her silence, so loud it echoed in her soul. She thought I was the same man, still trying, still holding on. But she didn't see that I had already started detaching, layer by layer, thread by thread. She kept bragging to her friends about upgrading her life, posting filtered photos of weekend spa trips and expensive handbags with captions like, "Know your worth." What she didn't realize was that while she was busy broadcasting a fantasy, I was crafting an exit, one with precision, timing, and complete legal clarity. I wasn't going to be the man who stormed out. I was going to be the man who left nothing behind but the truth and an empty closet. I moved money into protected accounts, opened a new line of credit in my name only, rented a small apartment, under an LLC I formed quietly. The man she thought would always be there had already left. He just hadn't packed yet. And still she didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't care. Either way, I stopped explaining myself. Stopped waiting to be thanked for things she no longer valued. I had spent years watering dead ground. Now I was planting roots elsewhere, just not where she could see them. Then came our next anniversary. 16 years. She mentioned it casually one morning, asking if I planned to redeem myself this year. I smiled, not sarcastic, not bitter, just calm. I told her she could make plans if she wanted. I had something personal to take care of that evening. She scoffed, said, "Don't worry, I'll celebrate with people who actually know how to show love." And that was when I realized she still thought I was hurting, still thought I was trying to win her back. She didn't know I had already given her the last gift she'd ever received from me. Not the bracelet, not the anniversary card. The gift was the time I gave her to realize what she had. And now that gift had expired. The next morning, I left a single envelope on the table. Inside, a note. "You won't have to pretend anymore. Papers are in motion. I wish you peace." No anger, no guilt trips, just truth. The kind that finally stops being wrapped in silence and starts walking out the door. The morning she read that note, I didn't stick around to see her reaction. I was already gone. My bags were packed, my new place already furnished. Nothing extravagant, just clean, calm, mine. There was no shouting, no pleading, no dramatic goodbye, just a man who finally chose to stop pouring himself into a glass that would never stay full. I left her the house, not because she deserved it, but because I didn't need it. She could keep the walls. I took my peace. She called me 6 times that day. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. "Are you serious? We're just going through a phase. You're really going to walk away after one bad year?" One bad year. She had humiliated me in front of family, stripped me of dignity in public, and turned our marriage into a performance. I had spent the last few years dying slowly in silence. She just hadn't noticed, because she was too busy filming her highlight reel. By day 3, her tone changed. "Let's talk. Can we fix this? I didn't mean to hurt you, but I wasn't interested in fixing what had been ignored for so long. You don't wait until the foundation is crumbling to decide you want to patch the walls." I had given her 1,000 silent moments to turn around. Instead, she walked deeper into herself, and now she was shocked to find the door behind her closed. I learned that real strength isn't in confrontation, it's in clarity, and I had never been clearer. I wasn't leaving because I was bitter. I was leaving because I finally saw my worth, and I wasn't going to keep offering it to someone who priced everything in dollars and discounts. She had called my gift cheap, but the truth is, she never understood what it cost to love her quietly, faithfully, consistently, and now she never would. Friends started asking questions, family too. She tried spinning it, saying I had changed, that I had become distant. I didn't defend myself, didn't share my side. I let the silence do the explaining. The ones who knew me, really knew me, didn't need a breakdown. They saw the peace in my face, and they understood. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The bracelet? Still in my drawer. Not as a reminder of her, but as a reminder of me, of the man I was before I began shrinking to fit her expectations. A man who loved deeply, gave fully, and eventually walked away powerfully. Weeks passed, and the messages slowed. I knew her well enough to sense the storm behind her silence. The way she'd retreat, then return twice as loud, hoping I'd cave. But I didn't. I wasn't the same man who stood in that restaurant a year ago, holding out a bracelet with shaking hands and too much hope. That version of me died the moment she laughed in front of everyone and called it cheap. What she didn't realize was that moment didn't just break my heart, it rewired it. She showed up at my apartment once. I didn't let her in. I watched through the peephole as she stood outside, her arms folded, her pride battling her panic. She knocked twice, then whispered my name, not angrily, not arrogantly, just confused, like she couldn't believe I had really followed through. She stood there for a few minutes, then left. I never opened the door, because some doors once closed should never swing back open. A few weeks later, I signed the final papers. The lawyer called to confirm everything was official. No more legal ties, no more shared accounts, no more pretending. I stared at the document for a long time before putting it away, not out of regret, but out of reverence. I had spent 15 years believing love meant enduring, holding on, fixing. But now I knew, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is let go before you disappear trying to stay. She tried again, this time through her sister, a casual message asking if we could have coffee for closure. I declined, not because I was angry, but because I didn't need closure from her. I had created it for myself, quietly, deliberately, on my own terms. There was nothing left to understand. She made a choice. I made one too. The difference was, mine came with dignity. I rebuilt my life slowly, met people who listened, who didn't need grand gestures to feel valued, who understood that presence is louder than presence, and in the small, steady rhythm of peace, I healed. I began writing again, traveling, investing in myself, without guilt, and through all of it, I never once wished I had stayed. Because the man who gave her that anniversary gift, he was kind, but he was also starving. Starving for love, for recognition, for safety. The man I became after walking away. He is full, not because he found someone else, but because he found himself. It was a year to the day after that anniversary dinner when the final message came, a simple photo of the bracelet. The same one she'd laughed at, discarded, humiliated me over, in front of a room full of people. It sat there, in her hand now, looking smaller somehow. Alongside it was a message. I didn't know what I had. I see it now. I'm sorry. I stared at the screen for a while, not with anger, not with longing, but with a calm so deep it almost felt holy, because by then I wasn't carrying her anymore, not the memory of her voice, not the weight of her judgment, not even the hope that she might understand one day. That hope had long since burned out, not in a blaze of fury, but like a candle in an empty room, quietly and completely, and the space it left behind. I filled it with peace. The truth is, I had already forgiven her, long before she asked. Not for her sake, but for mine. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's about letting yourself walk out clean. And I had walked out clean. No revenge, no smear campaign, just silence, strength, and a door that never needed to be opened again. People ask me now if I miss her, if I regret it, and I tell them honestly I don't miss her. I miss who I thought she was. But I'm not angry at that version either, because he, the man I was back then, needed to believe in her to become who I am now. Sometimes heartbreak is the tuition you pay for becoming whole. So I never replied to her message. I never told her that I still had the original receipt for the bracelet. Not because I wanted a refund, but because I wanted to remember the value I had placed on something so simple and sincere. Something she couldn't recognize until it was far too late. The next time I gave someone a gift, it wasn't about proving anything. It was just about sharing joy, no expectations, no price tag. And when that person looked me in the eye and said, "This means more than you know," I realized some people see the soul behind a gesture, others only see the cost. She saw the price. I finally chose someone who saw the heart. And in doing so, I gave myself the greatest gift of all. After the apology, I expected to feel something sharp, maybe vindication, maybe sorrow, but all I felt was distance, not just physical, but spiritual. I had crossed a bridge she never noticed I was building, and now on the other side I could see everything so clearly. I wasn't bitter, I wasn't lonely. I was finally me again, without the need to perform, please or prove my worth to someone who measured love in status instead of sacrifice. I started seeing a therapist, not because I was broken, but because I didn't want to carry silent lessons into future chapters. I wanted to unpack the pain with honesty, not shame. And what I found surprised me. Beneath the grief, there was pride. Not arrogance, but a quiet pride, because I didn't become cruel. I didn't stoop to revenge. I didn't destroy her. I just left. That takes strength. That takes self-respect. And more than anything, it takes love. Love for the self you buried while trying to hold a marriage together alone. And in that healing, I discovered joy again. Real joy. In small things. Sunrises without obligation. Dinners that didn't involve walking on eggshells. Conversations that didn't twist into criticism. I had been surviving in that marriage, and now I was living, not louder, just truer, and people noticed. My daughters saw it. My friends did too. They said I looked lighter. I felt lighter. Because when you drop the weight of someone who never appreciated your strength, you finally rise. One night, I stood at my new place, looking out the window as it rained. That bracelet sat on the table beside me, still beautiful, still intact. I smiled, not with regret, but with gratitude. It was never a failed gift. It was just given to the wrong person, and maybe one day I'll give something like it again. But not out of hope, out of knowing that love, real love, sees the intention before it checks the price. And that's the thing about heartbreak when handled right. It doesn't harden you, it softens you toward yourself. Months passed, life moved forward. And then one day while grabbing coffee I saw her, not in some dramatic slow-motion scene, just there, alone, seated by the window, looking tired in a way no filter could hide. She saw me. Our eyes met. She didn't smile. Neither did I. But there was something in her expression, not hatred, not longing, just the hollow look of someone who realized too late what they traded for a thrill. She didn't approach. Neither did I. Not because of pride, but because of peace. We had already said everything we needed to without saying a word. That moment wasn't closure, it was confirmation that I had chosen right, that leaving wasn't abandonment. It was survival. I finished my coffee and walked out without looking back, because sometimes dignity means keeping your silence even when you're tempted to speak. Later that night, I journaled the moment down, not to remember her, but to remember me, how far I'd come, how quiet, calm, and complete I felt. There were no missing pieces anymore, just space. Space for new beginnings. Space for someone who wouldn't need to be impressed, only loved. I no longer wanted to be chosen by someone who couldn't see me. I wanted to be recognized. And one day, I will give another gift. Not a bracelet, maybe not even something material, but it will come from a place of fullness, of truth. And it will be received with the reverence it deserves. Because this time, I won't be handing my heart to someone who measures love by the weight of a box. She laughed at gold because she couldn't recognize its shine. But I didn't dim. I just learned to shine where I was seen. And now, I'm finally home.